Welcome back to another episode of 13th Elm. Sitting here with Bill and Rob. Say what up.
How's it going, guys?
What up?
All right, you know what it is at this point in time. We're going to sit here, talk about some movie that we watched this week, and we're going to get in an argument along the way. So let's not hold our breath any longer. This movie was my pick, and none of us were wanting to watch it, but we did. So, The Babadook, 2014, written and directed by Jennifer Kent. It's starring Essie Davis as Amelia Vanek and Noah Wiseman as Samuel Vanek. There's a couple other people in this film. None of them are really that important. They don't really have a lot of screen time or contribute much to the story. I guess you could argue that Amelia's sister and her daughter, Samuel's cousin's name is Ruby, and what's the sister's name?
Aunt Claire.
Aunt Claire.
Auntie Claire.
They were both in the movie, I guess, for a decent amount of plot.
They were both in the
and
movie.
screen
That's
time, but I didn't even write their names down.
Oh,
Me neither.
okay.
Okay, so for those of us who haven't seen the film, let's dive into a little bit of an introduction to the plot. Amelia is a widow living in Australia who has brought up her 6-year-old son, Samuel, alone. Her husband, Oscar, was killed in a car accident that occurred as he drove Amelia to the hospital during labor. Sam is preoccupied with imaginary monsters against which he has built weapons to fight. One day, Amelia picks up her son from school after Sam had brought one of these weapons to the school. Later that night, Sam asks his mother to read a pop-up storybook. She goes to the bookshelf to find one she has not seen before called Mr. Babadook. It describes the Babadook, a tall, pale-faced humanoid with a top hat and talons, which torments his victims after they become aware of its existence. Amelia is disturbed by the book and its mysterious appearance, while Sam becomes convinced that the Babadook is real. Sam's persistence about the Babadook leads Amelia to often have sleepless nights as she tries to comfort him. Now, more or less, that's the plot. We'll get into how it kind of develops from there, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I guess, what do we think about this movie, and what do we have to say kind of about the Babadook as a new monster to horror?
This is the second time I watched it. The first time I didn't really enjoy it, and I was really hoping that I would like it more the second time, and that didn't really happen. I probably enjoyed it a little bit less, to be honest. I mean, the monster design, we'll get into it, but it's like kind of cool, but it's also not very intimidating, if you ask me, because, I mean, it's like two-dimensional, because, I mean, it comes out of the book. It makes sense, but it is not creepy looking to me. It's a little goofy looking.
Yeah. Also, I didn't dislike this movie when I first saw it, but I wasn't crazy about it, and I think I appreciate it more after the second watch. Like, there's a lot of elements about this that I like on paper, and there's stuff that I actually, while I was watching, that I enjoyed, but overall, like, I'm not crazy about this film. And the character, that Mr. Babadook, he looks like Cesare from Caligari. Like, he looks like the man who laughs. Like, I got like big vibes of that, not only with the white face and kind of black lipstick and everything, but he's wearing like a trench coat. I think there's a scene at one point where Amelia's watching TV, and it's like a bunch of black and white movies. There's like scenes that looks like it's out of Metropolis, or maybe the guy who got shot in the man who got shot in the moon, or whatever. Like, there's
a trip to the moon, and then they also show a scene from top 5 favorite horror movie of mine, Phantom of the Opera, 1926. Lon Chaney. This is Lon Chaney, Phantom of the Opera. When they unmask him, it's so good.
And they show like the Babadook like in a cabinet kind of, and like open it up, and he's in the cabinet in the sepia black and white film on TV. So I don't know, I got a lot of that, but I love artifacts. I love the storybook. You know, just like the actual idea of having like an evil pop-up children's book, and I love the puzzle box from Hellraiser, and I love like all the special artifacts from like the Indiana Jones movies. So like that's right. Some nostalgia for sure, but I don't know.
The book was cool.
The book is cool.
It was a cool idea. The design of the actual book with the popping up images of him and stuff was enjoyable.
I almost bought a copy
when it first came out.
Yeah, it was like 6 months after it had
Yeah.
debuted, and they were pretty expensive. Like I think it was $150 or maybe closer to $200.
Yeah, that's a little much.
And it was they made whatever, so many of them a gross, and once they were gone, they were gone. But again, like I love the idea of it more than actually like watching the film. But the film is good, and I liked it more on the second watch.
Yeah, I definitely picked up on a lot of allegory and more metaphor than I did on the first try. But still, even like a lot of that, I just can't help but think, oh, they're trying to do this for this part, and like it makes sense. But I can't help but think of these other movies that did the same thing way better.
I got big like Home Alone and like Calvin and Hobbes vibes from Samuel. Like he's really precocious and is also like pretty perceptive about his mother's state of mind, and he's only 6 years old, and he builds like a catapult, like a crossbow gun, and like he's busy. He's got stuff going on upstairs.
He's got a lot of free time as well.
Well, he's got a dead dad, so
he's
yeah.
got a dead dad, and his mom does not seem to be his biggest fan.
No, she wants to avoid him at all costs.
Which, do you blame her? Because, wow, he is incredibly annoying.
He is, and I mean, clearly the whole movie's a metaphor for like her untreated grief, baggage, trauma, however you want to describe it. And he's written to be like a rambunctious, hellion 6-year-old. He's not supposed to be very likable. He's annoying as fuck and speaks his mind to his and everyone else's detriment. But yeah, him like screaming in the car, like the scene, like, why would you be normal?
Dude, so annoying.
And I guess he was not an actor. What was the actual actor's name who plays
Noah Wiseman?
Noah Wiseman. Yeah, he'd never acted before.
Yeah, apparently, according to Jennifer Kent, it was kind of challenging to work with him for many reasons. One of which being that he wasn't an actor, another one being that he, in her words, and I'll mess up the quote, but it's something to the extent of he had a very loving and involved mother who was on the set all the time and very concerned with his treatment. So I guess that, good performance, honestly, from him as a young kid and somebody who'd never done this before. And he is horribly annoying and a tyrant little shit, to be quite frank. But it's supposed to be that way. And honestly, as we continue to go through the plot, I think that a lot of that turns by the end of the movie. I'll just jump in real quick and I'll correct myself. 1925 Phantom of the Opera, not 1926. Oof, I know the Elmers are eating me alive right now on social media, but
good save.
Yeah, so this movie I had also seen once prior, just to kind of catch up to where we are in the conversation. I'd seen it once prior. This was my second viewing. I was hoping that I would like it a little bit more, and unlike Bill, I think I did like it quite a bit more, and that's not saying much because I really didn't care for it for the first time. I didn't know what to expect my first time going into it. I just heard that there's this great new horror movie from this debutante filmmaker, female from Australia named Jennifer Kent. I'd never heard her name or seen her associated with any projects before. And people were talking about how this is like one of the greatest horror movies of the 21st century. Like people absolutely love this movie. And I didn't know what to expect. And when I saw it, I think I was just waiting for something different. And I missed everything that this film was supposed to be. That being said, I liked it more this time. And I think what I can kind of echo that you said, Rob, is that I appreciate a lot more of this film than maybe I liked or enjoyed. And I can objectively say, from my opinion, so yeah,
subjectively,
I can subjectively say that I think this is actually a really good film in the sense that it's made well, it's well acted, it's a fairly unique concept, and that, yeah, it's good for all the reasons that people like it. I still don't love it, but it's good. And Samuel, Noah Wiseman, he's horrible and honestly insufferable for the first 2 acts of this film. I want to turn off the movie because I'm tired of this little kid.
Right.
Essie Davis kills it, honestly, as
She's
Amelia.
great.
She does a really, really good job. And a lot of the art direction and kind of like the set design was really it's not fun. It's the exact opposite of that. It's depressing, and it is like a metaphor for grief and loss and agoraphobia and like just pain of losing your partner and the father of your child and not necessarily loving your child because he's a handful and you're stretched thin. And she's kind of got like a thankless job, and she's not in financial great standing. I mean, they have a house, but you can tell it's small, it's of modest means, and she's doing her best to get Samuel to and from school and get herself to and from work and keep the house clean and all that. Like, I mean, she's tired and she's hurt, and she never really had time to heal. And I think that a lot of this movie is obviously talking about mental health and kind of depression. And you can see that on the set, right? The walls are like bare and they're not filled with joy, and they're all like something between gray and blue for most of the movie. Everything that really happens comes out of the shadows, right? It's kind of like he was being suppressed. Or like even the downstairs area, like the basement, like her memory room with all of like her husband, her late husband.
Dead husband stuff.
Yeah, like I mean, there's a lot of things that are buried. There's a lot of things that are in the dark. There's a lot of things that are overwhelmingly depressing in the film. And I don't know that I caught that to the degree that I should have my first watch. But noting all of that this time, it's a good enough film that I could see why people love it. I just had a little bit of different opinion.
No, I agree with you, man. And definitely the kind of the lighting and the mood. A lot of the second half of the film takes place inside the home, and not only are the colors kind of gray, blue, like the kitchen's kind of like a stark white, but there's not a lot of like homey kind of memorabilia on the walls.
Yeah, there's like no kitsch or clutter.
And most of the time the blinds are drawn, and a lot of that is like Amelia's depression and also having not Noah, Samuel like out of school, like all that. Like they're staying at home. They're like wallowing is not the right word, but sort of dealing and not coping with what's going on. But also, I did not catch this on the first watch through, but I got big vibes of Requiem for a Dream, which we briefly discussed before we hit record. But like when her watching TV and you get close-ups of her face and it's the TV screen, like the light of it and her like crazy hair, like flyaways and everything. I got big Shining vibes towards the last, like the final act where before she confronts the Babadook essentially. And there was another film, but
a lot of the film, like during that time, as we'll touch upon, there's a lot of like elements of like claustrophobia and cabin fever, and it's not because she's not going out into the world. It's that like her world is so overwhelmed with being the mother of Samuel. She doesn't really have time for herself, and like she's kind of isolated in that sense, and she's also reluctant to like establish relationships with people around her because a lot of the people can't stand her child, which her sister Claire goes so far as to say,
and she can't either, right?
And then also like she's tired of like the petty, like I don't know, hand holding and tiptoeing that she gets about like her being a single mother and losing her partner. And like you see that at the birthday party with the friends of Claire who are
disadvantaged women.
Yeah, and like she's sick of this shit. You know what I mean? And I get that.
She is, and most of this is from her perspective, or her and Samuel's perspective, versus like again like kind of the petty, mean, like even like obligatory sorry she gets at the birthday party. But her sister spells it out. She's like, you can't cope with this. Anytime someone brings it up, like you shut down. She's like, I have coped with it. I never bring them up ever. And it's like, that's kind of the fucking problem. And I feel for her. And I do like also like the things coming to a fever pitch with her son acting out and being disobedient, being pulled out of school, all of her problems with work, and then also balancing that as a widow and a single mother. But the Babadook exists because it's been 6 years and she has not really dealt with the grief, and she hasn't seen somebody professionally about this, and it's only now like coming to a head to where she's having tactile and auditory hallucinations and freaking the fuck out. So I think a lot of it is like her kind of procrastination on coping with this coming to a head and the manifestation of it, which makes for an interesting movie. But I think one of my big problems with this film is that it seems to waffle back and forth between whether this is actually supernatural or it's in her head. And I really think that if this film had ended before the 7 minutes after the CPS comes for the second time, towards the very end of the film, I would have liked this movie a lot more.
I mean, it does. It seems like it takes place in a very slightly alternative reality, right? Like, I mean, it's not anything crazy where cars are flying and people are walking upside down or some weird shit, but it's kind of like a storybook. I mean, we get those scenes of like when she's floating above her bed, and like you guys already touched on, just how everything looks. It's all dark and monotone, which I do like. It sets the tone of the movie, and it's depressing, but if you don't have like at least a little bit of contrast somewhere in there, then all that kind of just gets washed out, and it gets kind of boring. And like I hate to compare it to other things, but I mean Midsummer did that too a lot of times. That there's just like a lot of monotone colors, but then they have the art on the wall or like something to contrast it. Even The Thing, when everything is pretty much like white and gray in there, and then they have the actual thing and the blood and stuff that looks better against that background. But man, when it's just gray and dark the whole fucking time and we never get a break from that, it just added an element of it being like a little bit more boring than I think it could have been.
Well, it's
But
depressing first of all, and like I know you're saying like paint that backdrop to be gonna have some contrast there, but I think that this movie largely doesn't have that redeeming quality, and even when we touch on like the end, it's not so much about defeating as much as it is like living with in a lot of ways.
yeah, because I mean as we've kind of touched on, the Babadook kind of exists as her repressed memories that she's never really acknowledged in the almost 7 years of her husband dying, and yeah, like that's like he's always there. It's always there lurking in the shadows, and if you don't face him, then you're never going to be able to fix the relationship with your fucking shitty kid and everything else.
Right. So, she reads the book, and Sam ends up taking like the dart gun to school. He gets kicked out of school, and it's putting more strain on her at the home, and with her other family relationships, like with her sister and stuff. Samuel shares, or his birthday is rather close to his cousin Ruby's birthday, so they've always had a birthday party on the same day. And a lot of this is because Amelia finds it hard to have a celebration, like a birthday party on his birthday, since that is also the day that she lost her husband. So they touch on that briefly, that Samuel's never had a birthday party on his actual birthday. And we'll talk about the birthday party that he does end up attending here shortly. But soon after he gets kicked out of school and she's read the book, and like kind of some strange things start occurring. Doors open and close by themselves. There's sounds that Amelia hears. The lights flicker occasionally. She finds like some broken glass in her fucking soup.
The food, yeah.
Yeah, and like her initial reaction is to freak out and like get Samuel to stop eating his food, obviously, as one does. But when she goes to check his food, there's no glass in it. And so she instantly starts to blame him. And he's like, it's the Babadook, it's the Babadook. And this patented, obnoxious, horrible Samuel like voice. And God, he's so annoying. And like, you don't trust him or have any sympathy for him early on. And I think you have a ton of sympathy for Amelia, right? Because like, you can totally see.
She looks terrible. I mean, she's a gorgeous woman, but I mean, she looks like she hasn't slept a wink or had time to take a shower in weeks. She looks crazy, which is great. Yeah, she did such a good job. I don't know much about the other work that she did, but I do know that this is far different from the work that she usually does.
She's
And
mostly
I think
just like in some Australian and New Zealand like soaps and different like television shows. She had small bits, and I think one of her biggest credits was like 31 episodes in some sort of a New Zealand soap
The
that
soap
I
opera,
don't
yeah.
recall the name of it. But this was kind of her coming out party for sure.
yeah,
No,
this
no,
is a
but
great pivot.
she works she's a widow and a single mother, and she works in hospice care. She's like an elder care nurse.
Yeah, she even has a depressing job.
Yeah, and she wears she has a very plain Jane collared kind of like half length dress sort of that she wears with
It's like a scrub dress
like
thing.
scrubs over it kind of. Yeah, so she not only does she look tired and look plain, but she works a job where you would be burnt out all the time. And
Yeah.
And then she's a single mother when she gets home. You know
also
what I mean?
that. Yeah.
And it's very easy to see why she doesn't have time for herself.
A lot of this
Absolutely.
can really be chalked up to sleep deprivation, hallucinations, and having a 6-year-old that's disobedient with an over-imagination. And all of you guys are suffering from the loss of your dead dad, husband that you've not dealt with. So, and I like that portion of it. And I don't know, again, with The Shining, towards the end where she's freaking out and being really abusive towards him, in her language without even actually touching him. I get a lot of that where not only does she have mental problems, but there's something supernatural going on, kind of like the Overlook Hotel. And then towards the end of it, I just I get the metaphor of still dealing with the loss and it's not over yet. And you have to, it's like a daily kind of ritual where you have to deal with this kind of thing. But the physical representation with the worms and just really didn't do much for me. I wish they'd cut it off before they showed that. I would have enjoyed the movie more.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well,
It's a matter of
not
taste.
skip to the end. Let's. There's a lot in between.
So you're talking about that word that I can't think of right now.
Humiliation.
No.
Jewelry?
They're having hallucinations.
Hallucinations.
That word escaped me.
Yeah.
And it definitely doesn't help that. So she finally takes Samuel to the doctor, and of course, all the tests come back fine. I think the doctor says he's like, your kid's really fucking annoying, but he's not sick.
Yeah.
And she's like, I know.
His brain overheats.
And she's almost
Pleading.
almost begging him, please, we haven't slept in weeks, and just give me something. So they get some kind of sedative, which I don't know if it. Yeah. So and then we get so we have the scene of her driving him home, and she's envisioning cockroaches all over her, and in the quick shot of Babadook, and
I mean, that's classic schizophrenia, paranoia, seeing bugs crawling on yourself.
Yeah.
Also, sleep deprivation, like you already said. She's fucking malnourished. She hasn't
Daylight
slept.
hallucinations.
I don't know if you guys have ever had hallucinations from sleep deprivation before, but
I haven't.
They're pretty real.
Yeah.
I remember seeing somebody at the edge of the driveway. I thought he was taking a piss, and it was just a brick mailbox. It wasn't somebody turned around pissing in the street. So, yeah, they're very real. I can't imagine having a child you're taking care of.
So, these events and Sam's behavior, they've kind of all in Amelia's mind, their origin is back to this Babadook because he keeps blaming all of these things on the Babadook. So she gets frustrated to the point where she rips up this book and throws it away in the garbage. And she's like, well, we're done with this Babadook bullshit.
Yeah, classic haunted artifact trope, trying to rid of the artifact, and then it shows up.
She puts it on a
fixed.
high shelf first, and then the wardrobe falls over on top of Sam, kind of, and he scurries under the. But then she tears it up and throws it away, and yeah.
Yeah. So then they go to the joint birthday party, and Sam's cousin Ruby, and she's bullying Sam in the treehouse.
Kind of a piece of shit.
She's horrible, but I mean, she's
Kids are pieces of shit.
probably mimicking what she hears her mother say, and
Doesn't she say, "Mom doesn't want to go over to your house; it's too depressing"?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she says that you're a bad kid and nobody likes you. That's why your dad is dead.
That's why you don't have a dad and
Yeah.
everybody else does.
Yeah.
Because no one wants you, not even your mom.
Brutal.
Yeah, horrible shit. And so Sam lashes out, and he ends up pushing her out of the treehouse, and she falls and breaks her nose. Amelia's sister Claire is like, "See, this is horrible. Like you leave these
Well,
kids unsupervised.
Watch after the children unless you want another
Did
one
you
hurt.
guys
Right.
notice the error with that too?
No.
So
Illuminate.
he pushes her out, like so she's falling backwards and she lands on her face. So
I don't know if you've ever fallen like 10 feet, but you tend to move.
Yeah, princesses always land on their feet.
it was out of a tree house and she was pushed hard. I don't think she would have flipped all the way around to land straight on her nose.
Let's try it.
I've already fallen out
Well-
of trees and gotten concussions, and
You know how like
I landed the same way I came out.
toilets spin a certain way? Well, in Australia they spin opposite, so the
Oh,
same thing
yeah.
happens with
Southern
toddlers falling
hemisphere.
out of tree
It was
houses.
Southern Hemisphere. That's a
No,
good point.
Southern
they didn't.
Hemisphere.
They didn't notice it, and it was kind of annoying.
They take you
Because I was like,
Yeah.
oh fuck yeah, finally like some
Push
violence.
that
yeah,
I hope
kill her.
I hope she like smacks her head on the ground and like gets fucked up, and then as soon as she gets up, I'm like, wait, how'd she land on her fucking face?
Yeah, that really took me out of it too. So on the trip home from this birthday party, though, is when we're in the car.
Yeah.
at the
Right,
set
yeah.
or whatever.
The car
and,
crash.
And Amelia is freaking out. She's so tired of Sam, and she's kind of realizing that he's not only making her miserable, but like everybody that could be like a friend or a resource or family can't stand him. And Claire goes so far as to say that even. And so she's distracted by that. She's starting to be like paranoid about this Babadook. She's hallucinating, and she drifts into the wrong lane of traffic and gets into a car accident, a head-on collision, to which, the other member or the other party in the car accident gets out of the car and starts yelling, what the hell's going on, blah, 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 blah. And she just backs up and drives away. He takes down no credentials or
No,
information.
he
or
just bought
anything.
that Mercedes too.
Yeah, he did just buy that Mercedes, as he said.
You crazy bitch! You're driving the wrong side of the lane. You got a child in there.
Yep, that's
Just
kinda
like
what he
that,
said. You could have killed him, all that shit. Yeah. So they go home and pass out because they got these tranks, and she's starting to get some good sleep. But she wakes up the next morning and finds the Mr. Babadook book reassembled on their front door. Actually, he hears like a knocking on the door.
There's a soft knock, and then there's a duck, duck, duck.
Yeah.
And
A
yeah.
ba dook 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 knock.
And I actually do like the scenes of her like falling backwards into
The
bed.
bed, yeah.
And I like the scenes of her like staying awake all night watching the TV, and then her like kind of turning over and the sunlight's peeking through. Like I enjoyed that cinematography.
Yeah, I mean, the cinematography and set design, like I said, is some of the stronger points of the movie. The acting's good, the story's good. I just, for whatever reason, I struggled to really like
Yeah,
this
man.
movie.
There's a lot of great elements, but as a whole,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I wanted more from like every aspect of it.
The parts are greater than the sum.
Exactly.
Definitely. And, there's a lot of people who really love this movie, and there's a lot of people who are kind of in the middle of the road like we are. And I would say that if you're not a huge horror movie fan, this is not the podcast for you. But if you're not a huge horror movie fan, or you're looking for a horror movie that doesn't rely on jump scares or over-the-top gore, or not a slasher type of movie, this one could be a movie that you find enjoyment from. And they could see a lot of people who aren't classic horror movie fans really using this as a bridge, because it is really approachable. It's not too long. It's well acted. It's recent. It's modern. It touches on some social commentary that's relevant today. And it's like I think we're all in agreement. It's a well-made film.
It is.
Absolutely.
But I also know, especially myself and Bill, fuck, man.
Holy fuck! Can we get some gore?
God damn it. Can somebody lose a fucking head or a tit? Let's cut off a tit.
You see
Yeah.
like a dead dog,
So fucking
But-
what?
but
Dude, I saw a dead dog on my
it is-
walk home from work today.
but also like the film
I
is
saw
like
one under my car when I fucking pulled in here.
I reversed a couple times. No,
I
like
didn't want it to suffer.
the subject of this film too is a very like human horror. Like it's something that people can identify with, even if you're not a widower or a widow.
Yeah, I mean, you could even argue that the Babadook doesn't physically exist, so there's no way that it could actually kill and harm people.
True.
'Cause-
On the other hand of that, though, it's like very terrifying to see like the real slippery slope of like you complicate mental illness with like traumatic loss and like struggles of like borderline poverty and a fucking shitty little half latchkey kid, and it's like
I mean, if anything, this film is the horror of being a single mother. Like that's what this film is
that's
about.
terrifying, dude. This is great. This is birth control, like for real. Like nothing's made me
Just
want
the
to
kid
not
alone.
have a fucking kid more than
Yeah.
Samuel.
Two things I want to touch on before we get any further. One is the scene in the bathtub, which I felt I'd already seen this film, so I knew it was going to happen. But in that specific moment where they get back, I think it's after the party, but they get back and she takes her, she like goes inside her, the neighbor Grace. He's like, "Oh, hey, sweetheart," and she totally ignores her. They go inside. She takes her coat off, but she's still wearing a dress, and she gets in the bathtub, and Sam shows up and he's like, "Are you okay, mommy?" And, "I don't want to lose you." And all of this looks like she's about to kill herself. She's in the bathtub with her clothes on.
Yeah.
She lifts Samuel up and puts him in. It's like, "Oh, it's so warm," like all of that. And that I felt stronger this time around. And two is that the Babadook is a gay icon, and I can get into the memeology of all of this.
Go ahead.
But yeah, so a lot of this started as like Twitter comments and some posts on Reddit and 4chan as well. And it started off with like a comment about how the Babadook is a single man trying to live his life and also terrorizing white families in the Australian suburbs, and like that's like gay
Highly
culture. Like,
fashionable and
well,
living
it's like
in the
this
closet and
is
shit.
yeah, exactly, and also him like living in the closet and everything. And then and this happened a couple years after the movie came out. It's like 2016, 2017. Then there was a huge post that we touched on before we hit record about how it popped up in like the LGBT queer friendly section of Netflix, and someone screenshotted that or photoshopped it, whatever, and posted it, and people went ham with it. Like it went viral. And to the point where that 2017's Pride had like a bunch of people with Babadook costumes and Babadook signs, and it just kind of took its own life from there, as memes often do. But yeah, his like existence as like a mental illness and also something you have to confront and deal with, and just his whole dramatic, like he'd make a whole pop-up book of himself just for the drama of it. And there's a bunch of tie-ins with the Babadook and also RuPaul's Drag Race. We're like, "Mr. Babadook, we are Babashook. Like, you are this week's winner of this challenge." Like, just there's a wealth of it.
Jennifer Canna actually had some comments on that when she was asked, is the Babadook a gay character? And she said something to the extent of, I don't really know, but what I do know is that he's evil and he does find a way to exist in everybody's real life. And I'm not surprised at all that he would capitalize on this and becoming more and more relevant even after I tried to like close the chapter on him. And so she like kind of plays into it a little bit. She doesn't make a comment one way or the other. I don't think she's ever taken a stance, nor does she care to, but she does find it fascinating that he has inserted himself into pop culture and remains relevant in a completely different sense than his character in the movie does. And I think that was a fun way to handle it too. She's kind of a cool chick, I think.
So you agree with Jennifer Kent that the gay agenda is evil by nature and insidious?
What the fuck?
That's what I got.
That's what you just
that's what said,
verbatim.
right? No?
I didn't say no either. I just said what the fuck.
I do enjoy that because I didn't know that there was stuff previous to the Netflix like incident. I thought
Yeah.
that was pretty much like all it was, and it started some memes. I didn't know that there was it stemmed from even before that.
Most memes start as a concept, like on a some poster comment, and then a year or 6 months later take off. But yeah, as you Elmers hear it first, Michael is indifferent about gay bashing. So
What the fuck? Dude, no. That's not at all accurate.
It's not accurate. Not accurate.
I don't appreciate this even.
I'm sorry.
The Cheshire grin you have on your face says otherwise.
Whoa.
Because you look like a little cat.
Okay.
Let's keep it moving.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of 13th Elm.
Well, can we talk about the
What?
pterodactyl screech?
No.
Which one?
I don't know what that
The
means.
pterodactyl screech?
All of Samuel's lines?
Get-
no,
get louder.
no!
Get
Oh
louder
my
and talk
god!
closer to the
Oh
phone.
my god, the Babadook!
God damn it.
The Babadook, the Babadook, the Babadook. The Babadook makes so many noises. I've got bird flapping, I've got cicadas, and I've got the Wilhelm scream of dinosaur noises / Godzilla, where it makes a screech that I'm serious. It's been in so many movies. It's insane. You don't. I'm
I
not
guess
making
I
this up.
didn't
You know what I'm
notice.
talking about, right?
No.
Do you know
Not a clue.
what?
But we're going to skip right over it.
No,
We've
we're
talked
not.
enough.
We
We've
have
talked enough.
so much about pterodactyl screech.
Oh, go ahead. I'd like to think that pterodactyl screech is like some sort of prehistoric Dustin Diamond.
I'm
You know?
serious. Like it took me out of the film.
You really took me out of this pod, so we're going to keep it moving. So, anyway, after Amelia finds the reassembled book on the doorstep, it
Right.
does this time come with like a new message. Like there's words
The
written
words
in
are
it.
different, yeah.
There are empty pages in an earlier scene at the back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you just go ahead and continue with that? Seems like that was going somewhere.
This is an addendum to what you were saying.
So there's new words there in the book, and it's saying that the Babadook's going to become stronger if she continues to deny its existence, right? And up to this point, she really hasn't seen a physical manifestation, and you can argue that she never does, but a physical manifestation of the Babadook. But there's been multiple instances, like you said, where she's watching TV, where she sees a creature that looks similar to the Babadook. She's seen it kind of like through the window in her neighbor's house. Like Miss Gracie seems to see like shadows that are standing above her, and then it's like, oh, is that blah, blah, blah.
she's like watching TV.
Yeah, and there's like different moments where in her house and in like the police station she goes to, and which I thought was great actually. I really like the coat hanging up with like the hat on the coat rack
But what are
above
those
it.
Right.
fucking gloves?
Oh, his like Edward Scissorhand fingers. That
Yeah.
I don't know, but did
Like,
the police
is there a
officer?
cop that wears that?
Yes. Did the police officer not look like Australian Tom Hanks?
I don't really remember,
Yeah,
to be
I
honest.
completely missed over that. But I do like this new bit where anything you say, I'm just gonna dismiss.
Is that a bit? I feel like that's true.
Well, there might be a reason for that.
Gay Besh says what?
Huh? Anyway, so this we're really off the rails with this one tonight.
That's fine. We got time.
It's all right. We do have time.
If you made it through our midsummer episode,
This will
is
be a
walk
bless
in
you.
the park.
No kidding. So there's new pop-ups in this book too. The time that
Yeah.
she finds it on the step, and it's like her. Is like seemingly like a woman, and she's kind of getting the impression that it's
It's
herself.
a blonde woman. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of them is like her strangling her dog, and she does, and the dog looks a lot like their family pet, Bugsy.
Bugsy.
Yeah, Bugsy's cute. He's adorable.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Cody
it
does
shows another one where she's killing a young boy, who's, Sam, and then herself, like she's
Slashed
committing
the throat.
suicide in the book. She's terrified, obviously, so she covers that bitch in gasoline and sets it on
Well-
fire on the Barbie.
Not only that, man, the pop-ups that she's I don't know if she's vigorously activating the pop-ups, but they are pretty detailed. She's like wringing the neck of the paper child, and when
The
she cuts her
blood
own
ribbon.
throat, there's like blood
Yeah,
coming
the blood
out.
comes out.
And then she goes to the police officer with Australian Tom Hanks, and it's like, somebody's stalking me. Like, they sent me a children's book. He's like, well, can we see? He's like, well, no, I burnt it. And like, you burnt it. She's like, yeah, I burnt it.
I feel like I'm watching the film. when you do these
Right? It's
accents.
pretty great, right? And then she talks about the phone calls, and she's like, well, how'd you know it was the same person? Because of what he wrote in the book that you burnt.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Comedy.
I get that why she would want to go to the police, but on the drive over, you got to be thinking, what am I actually going to tell these guys?
She hasn't slept
'Cause she
in
had nothing.
in
Yeah, she's
7
crazy.
weeks. She's insane. She wants to kill her child.
Which she fucking should have. It would have made for
It would have made for a
such
better movie.
Better movie.
Agreed.
I can't argue that. I mean, it would have
That-
been effectively more horrifying, right? Like it
Yeah.
would have been more
Yeah.
appropriate for the genre. I think less people would have liked it, but I mean,
I like
the
some
three
of
of us would
I
have
would
liked
have
it.
liked
some of Sam's lines too are like, "My daddy's in the cemetery." And also when he's like, I'm tired from all the drugs mom gave me.
He's like
Yeah,
honest to a
like-
fault, you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
have you ever met 6-year-olds? Like, yeah, that is
Yeah.
like how they are. Now, obviously, most of the 6-year-olds I've met don't have dead fathers and handfuls of drugs because their mom's going insane. And you know, under that circumstance, I could totally see why he would say those things, but he just is like real quick off the cuff with strangers and people just coming
Yeah.
up like, "Oh, you got a handsome little boy there. My daddy's dead." It's like, whoa, shit.
Shut the fuck up.
So
My mom gave me tranquilizers. Like, what the fuck?
it's horrible. So yeah, Amelia's talking to the police officers, and they kind of like dismiss her, and that's really the end of that chapter because like she
Fucking
doesn't have
bitch.
anything
She
to
backs
say.
out and she's like, well, she sees the Babadook cloak and she's like, fuck this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so you know, and then they become more and more isolated. Like Sam's not in school because of his incidents with the weapons. She's trying not to go anywhere. Her only real friends and family, Claire, have already said like, "You've ruined our birthday party. Don't come over here anymore. We can't stand you and your son." Now she's starting to have these like frequent visions of the Babadook, and she's like actually terrified because she saw the pop-up diagrams with her. It's a diorama. What's in the pop-up? What pops up? I have to ask my uncle. He's actually authors pop-up books. Anyway, so
No, you can call him if you want to.
Call him. Put him on speaker.
he's he lives in Dubai. He's asleep right now.
Does he really live in Dubai?
Somewhere nearby.
Nearby
That's not-
Dubai?
Dubai is not near.
Well, somewhere nearby Dubai.
Okay.
Anyway,
Like Oman or.
no, I think he's Kurdish.
Oh, he's Kurdish?
Yeah, I think he's Kurdish.
So he doesn't have a home.
No, what? Anyway, so her mental state is slowly starting to decay, and she's kind of like taking it out on Sam. Like this is kind of the turning point where Sam is beginning to endear himself a little bit because he's like, oh, he's acutely aware of his mother's temperament and
Her
like.
deteriorating mental state.
Yeah, well, he's like, "Mommy, I love you." Like, blah, blah,
Mommy,
blah,
I
blah.
can call Auntie Claire. I can call Gracie.
Yeah, for like help and stuff, and she's like
Yeah, can we stay there tonight, please?
lashing out at him. And shit.
Mommy, I'm hungry. There's no food in the fridge.
Which
Well, if you're so hungry, why don't you eat shit?
Yeah, she's
That's-
getting really terse.
Oh my
with
god!
him.
Finally, he gets what he deserves. But did you guys read about how they film those? So Ellie
Yeah.
like didn't want to say like yell those lines in an actual child, so instead they had just like some random adult on his knees, so she could yell them.
That's
And then
fucking lame.
and then the kid was told things such as, "Oh, we took all your Legos and threw them away," for him to get the reaction. Which
So-
I think is lame too. They should have broken that child down.
They should have gone more Shining and Kubrick and just like
Oh my
constantly
God.
kept him on edge.
demanded perfection.
Actually-
Demanded perfection. Wake him up in the middle of the night. Scream at him.
Fun story about that. Actually, that's
Fun story.
Yeah, that's not at all how that happened.
No.
Actually. Danny Lloyd didn't know he was in a horror movie.
Oh, I was talking about Wendy.
Wendy, yeah.
No, Danny Lloyd, the young boy
Yeah.
who plays Danny.
Yeah, who plays
Torrance,
Danny.
During the filming of that, he didn't know that he was in a horror movie. He thought he was in like a family drama, but that's what they kept telling him. So a lot of the a lot of the scenes where like Nicholson and Wendy or Shelley Duvall are, I don't know, yelling at or abusing him, he's not actually sharing the set with them, and he was being told like similar things. Even during like promotion and production, what is wrong with me? It's post-production
Project more.
and like the screening of the film, he didn't go to the premiere and stuff, and he didn't find out until he was like in high school that he was in a horror movie. Like he put it together himself later on in life that he was in this movie, The Shining.
Do you think it's more unsettling than being told as a child actor that you're in a horror movie, or
Or being gaslit
or being
for months.
gaslit by
during-
Kubrick until you're 17?
I don't know, but I mean, it's just an interesting little aside. I thought I would.
I think that that art is a good reason to mentally abuse children.
You've had some hot takes tonight, Rob.
We've gone about how this is actually a black comedy.
This movie was so fucking funny.
There were some funny parts. Like most of it is Sam's kind of blunt lines, like his dialogue of him freaking people out. I did like, but
Yeah. Oh, God. Evil Ed or Samuel?
Evil Ed is way worse.
Really?
He has no redeeming qualities.
What redeeming qualities does Samuel have?
He loves his mother.
But then why did he stab her?
He does stab her in the thigh. That is accurate.
You can make the argument that that wasn't his mother.
True.
Well, let's actually get
True.
to that.
Let's get to that.
Because she's losing her mind. She's telling her young son to eat shit after he interrupts her like little alone time.
Nap. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
We did.
We did.
Not with the hot mics.
Yeah, we did. We just talked about it.
Oh, did we?
Didn't.
Okay.
Did we not talk about the bean flicking?
The bean. We didn't talk about that. That's different. Because
That's what we're
No, that's
talking
what
about.
no,
we're talking
when
about.
she tells him to eat shit, it's when she's going to bed when it's already light outside.
Bill was
Oh,
trying
okay.
to specifically talk about the flicking.
Yeah.
Right, with a TiVo remote.
Yeah. When he's kind of like a little cock block.
Well, he's starting to see the Babadook in his armoire.
Yeah, and
You-
he's
it's-
freaked out.
They don't show the Babadook, but like you see him like glaring over at the armoire.
Right. Yeah.
And then and mom is trying to get off, and she gets her vibrator out of that wicker basket thing, but can't quite seal a deal before Sam.
Mommy
Yeah, mommy.
just runs in there.
jumps on the bed.
And you could tell, like, honestly, this is like the first time she has like any sort of solace because she's like high on the tranquilizer. She's by herself. She's put her son to bed. He's finally sleeping through the night, or so she thinks, is expecting, and she's like trying to get alone. And he comes in and interrupts, and she just starts losing it. And honestly, like from that moment, and I get it, she just like completely erratic and violent. She's cutting the phone line when he suggests because he calls
The neighbor,
Gracie, the
yeah.
neighbor, to say if he could stay
Yeah.
the night over there, and she's like, oh, blah blah blah, and she's like waving this knife like aggressively at Sam, and like kind of doesn't realize it, and she starts having these hallucinations shortly afterward because she's like, oh my god, and like puts the knife down. She kind of comes to, and then they sit down to like watch TV again. And
That she sees him like all bloody and cut up.
dead on the couch
Yeah.
and stabbed, and then she holds up a bloody knife, and then she's like, oh fuck, and then she wakes up. Obviously she didn't do that, but she's like slipping closer and closer to that reality. She's having more and more visions. She's seeing like apparitions of Oscar, her late husband,
Yep.
who is
I think
down
it's
in
gonna
the
rain.
yeah, and he's down in the memory basement or whatever, and he's like, yeah, well, we can return all of our life back to normal if you bring me the boy.
Bring me the boy.
Is this when she
Bring me
sees
the boy.
the news story too?
Oh,
Because I did like that part.
okay. I liked it. Why does the newscaster have an American accent if they're in Australia?
Because they obviously don't pay attention to details such as people getting pushed out of tree houses and
All
accents.
the other news
there's another one,
casts
too.
are in Australian, not American.
I
so-
know.
And as everybody knows, Americans are not allowed to immigrate to Australia, and I've never seen anybody on American television with an accent.
Okay, all I know,
It's a very genocentric country,
all I know is that the Anglosphere in general tends to have. I know that Canada has like what do you call it? A quota on like how much American culture they allow into their mainstream media, and that the UK has for a number of decades have people from like Northern Ireland or Scotland be newscasters, news announcers, whatever, to kind of show like the United Kingdom unity instead of just having received pronunciation. All I'm saying is that this takes place in Australia, and all the other newscasters are Australian, and then all of a sudden, this hallucination as an American newscaster, it was weird.
It's also a hallucination, though.
You're right. It is a hallucination, so...
An inaccurate hallucination.
Yeah, and there's lots of
But
things that
the-
occurred in this hallucination that should have been telltale that it was not accurate or real, and maybe that was just a little nod. I don't
Maybe
know.
it was. Maybe it was lazy. Maybe it was lazy filmmaking.
I
Maybe
think
it
it
was.
was lazy.
I don't know. Jennifer Kent was kind of on point with this. I don't think many of the things that she did were on accident. And she did one of the most effective things you can do when making an ambitious film like this, if you want to call it that. She kept it short. This is like an hour and 30 minutes, which is good because I don't know how much more you could have stretched out of it. And some might even argue the last 7 minutes should have
7
been.
minutes. Yeah,
cut out
too
of it.
long.
But, yeah, so the hallucination, whatever. We got a newscaster who may or may not have had an American accent.
Definitely
He
did.
definitely did. But
You just said you don't remember it, Bill. Now you're just
I'm saying he
rabble-rousing.
does.
I never said I didn't remember.
She sleeps with her dead husband's violin.
Yes,
Yes.
as you do.
Yeah, I mean,
Leave it.
God, Bill. What are we gonna do with him?
Oh. Thought you were blaming me.
No, I'm just.
Also,
is his
like-
mic still on? Can you cut the levels on his
She,
mic?
she bribes him with like the equivalent of Australian Chuck E. Cheese and a milkshake, and also gives him ice cream for dinner when
Wait,
she's
which
like
was
totally
what?
losing it.
What was the equivalent?
I don't know, whatever the name of the restaurant where
think it
they
was
go
more
and
of like
she's
a
having like a
Denny's.
milkshake and
I
stuff.
don't know if there was any Chuck E. Cheese element here.
I mean, it's the equivalent. Like, you can have whatever you want. We can go wherever you want. It's like 9 a.m. and I'm trying to go to sleep, and I told you to eat shit, but I feel bad about it, so let's go out.
I told you to eat shit, so we can settle for ice cream now.
And she also has a toothache and like pulls her own molar out, right? After the ice cream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this before or after we pretty much are getting a sense that the Babadook has taken over?
This is literally right there in the next thing in my notes that I was going to talk about.
All right, go ahead.
Because she flees the downstairs basement,
Right.
And she realizes that her like control over herself has slipped, and that she's probably under some sort of like possession or influence. And this really comes to a head in the next scene where she is being pestered and annoyed by Bugsy, and she snaps his neck. She does in fact kill her dog, which is like the first of the three like premonitions from the book, like kill her dog, then kill Samuel, which she's already hallucinated about, and kill herself, which she's been on edge of doing the entire movie. We're talking about her in the bathtub looking like she's preparing for some sort of suicide.
Right.
And so at this point, like, she knows she's already having like these hallucinations. I guess that we skipped over like the CPA like agents coming to her house, and
Yeah.
she's like taking everything out of the fridge and moving it off of the wall because she sees these cockroaches crawling out of a hole that doesn't exist.
It's a hole in the wallpaper. Hole in the wallpaper.
Yep. She's just she's kind of losing it, and she kills the dog. And then what happens after that?
She goes full chimpanzee mode.
Oh, yeah.
She grabs onto the fucking door frame and then is
Swings
like
and kicks
throwing
it.
her
Yeah,
legs
yeah,
into
yeah,
the
yeah.
door. Like, it was insane.
I did not particularly enjoy that. I thought it looked pretty
And then she
silly.
floats. She like floats into Samuel's room and
Yeah.
has
She's,
like
like,
distorted
trying to
voice
kill
and
him,
everything.
like, she's,
She
like-
is.
definitely pursuing him.
She is, but she definitely goes King Louis Jungle Book style and like is swinging on that door frame, busting it open with her feet.
Yeah. And then he ultimately is, confronted by his mother and her rage, and then he like begins to caress her face and kind of show affection towards her, and it begins to break Amelia's I don't know, kind of like her possession, and she like regurgitates this inky black substance which seems to like create kind of like a Rorschach of the Babadook. No, you don't remember this?
I don't.
After he's like, it's like she's like expelling a demon from herself. She's like purging this black substance.
Right.
And then Sam reminds her that you can't get rid of the Babadook, right? And this is like at the bottom of the stairs. And then
Okay, is this before
Sam-
Gracie knocks on the door?
yes, this is right as Sam is talking to his mother and then gets pulled up the stairs. This is like the first physical manifestation of like some sort of
Oh, yeah, him
phantasm.
getting-
like, he
yeah,
gets
yeah.
like
Dragged, yeah.
dragged up the stairs by an invisible force. So he's locked in Amelia's bedroom, and Sam is saved by Amelia knocking down the door to find her son. And then Amelia is forced by the Babadook to like rewatch the vision of her husband's death. Like we're in like full blown hallucinatory like territory at this point, right? And she confronts the Babadook, and she's like actually screaming at essentially nothing. It's kind of like the culmination of all of her like internal mental health struggles. She's kind of like facing the demons of grief and loss, and all the things that the entire movie is predicated on. and then the beast retreats down into the basement and locks the door, or she locks the door, and kind of like compartmentalizes all of her anguish. Right? I mean, that's kind of what's going on here. And then Sam and Amelia manage to recover. I think that's like right at this point or right before when Gracie, the neighbor, knocks on the door and she's like, "Oh, I've heard, is like everything okay?" And she's like, "It's fine. Like, fucking get out of here." Like, blah blah blah. And she's like, "Well, Samuel called over earlier. If you remember, he made the phone call, and then she came down and
Took the phone from
took
him.
the phone, hung up on Gracie, and was like, "No, we're fine. Don't worry about it." And then cut the phone line. And so she's probably freaking out. Probably tried to call a couple times and getting a dead signal, and comes over here to make sure everything's fine. And Amelia's like, "You gotta leave." Like, blah 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 blah.
Well, she also mentions that, like, hey, I know this time of year is hard for you because it's like your son's birthday and also when your husband died in the car crash and shit. And I think she even mentions at the door that she loves them both and, like, I'm worried about you kind of stuff. And Amelia's, like, pushing her away. But yeah, that's the culmination and goes down to the basement.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of got these things out of order, but like prior to Samuel's being pulled up the stairs and stuff, right, kind of right before you think it's done, he knocks out his mother and like ties her down to the floor in the basement.
Which
with,
doesn't
like,
make any sense at all. He's like 6.
These knots are only second to
Shibari.
well, also like. His catapult is really impressive. Like, what kid
again,
doesn't know how to make
Calvin
like, a
and
dart
Hobbes,
gun, but,
like big time, right?
Yeah, for
or
sure.
like Bart Simpson almost. Like he's precocious. He's very mature for his age.
Yeah.
And she wakes up on the floor and is kind of like, "Oh yeah, I love you, Sam. Like, I'm sorry," and then like goes right into like strangulating him. Strangling him. Yeah, and she's freaking out.
I'll feast on your soul.
And that's, and then he caresses her face. She pukes up the demon. He goes, "Oh, blah blah blah," and then we get back to where we were.
And then he stabs her in the thigh, right?
He does stab her in the thigh, just to like get away from her.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah. That's when he retreats downstairs.
And well, she says like, "I want you to meet your dad. It's beautiful there," kind of stuff.
Yeah, she's
right?
gonna kill him, and
Yeah.
she's telling him that she's gonna kill him. She's lost her marbles. So the Babadook goes downstairs. She locks the door. They're kind of trying to just move past it. You know, you lock up your demons type of thing. And, fast forward a couple weeks or a week or something, 10
It's like
days.
a week because I think it's. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's like Sam's birthday.
Yeah,
right?
it's like a week later because CPS shows up and they're like, "We'll be back in a week."
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're back there. And I don't know, she seems to just have like recovered, and like she's happy and attentive, and she's like endearing herself to Sam in ways that she hadn't been for most of the film. And she's watching his annoying ass little magic tricks, and like, and
Nothing in my hands. Nothing in my hands. Nothing in my hands.
right, and then like, oh, play with your weapons and stuff like that. But then she's like out in the yard with her son while he's doing these magic tricks, and she starts getting like these earthworms and putting them in a bowl of dirt.
With dirt.
And she's like, "Oh, excuse me," while I go inside, and she like takes the bowl of dirt down to the basement to see the Babadook, who's like coming out to like feed on these worms, and like he's kind of like her captive now.
Yeah. And kind of like a barn cat, which is like, "You're okay, you're okay, you're okay," you know?
Well, she's confronting her fears.
Yeah.
She's living with her pain. She's acknowledging her grief and her loss.
And
her
feeding it
suffering.
earthworms.
It all still exists, but now it's more manageable.
Right.
It just requires some worms.
So you use your healthy hobbies of gardening to feed your
But your Babadook.
copingness. Your Babadook, yeah.
I mean, you could say, I think there's probably people out there that think every individual has their own Babadook. That is just a representation of their repressed feelings.
No,
But
I'm so healthy. I've never had any problems.
Well, I'm saying, I mean, I would just
we're not all like you.
I mean, I would just let them. I would just let them at me. But I think we all agree that this ending sucked. The fact that they are keeping this, demonic entity, as a pet chained up in the basement, feeding it worms. I mean, it's not a 100% like a happy ending, but for horror movie standards, it's a happy ending. No No one dies except for the dog. The two main characters are now okay.
Well, and the husband.
Not
Yeah,
in
but
the
he doesn't
movie.
die. He doesn't die in the movie.
6 years prior to the
No,
movie.
you see like the kind of a car crash dream thing at the very beginning, but that's about
Yeah.
it.
But I mean, with that since the beginning of the story, he's already dead.
They
is
should
what I
just had
mean.
like a gay English man renting out the basement who wears a top hat. I would have been fine with that.
That'd been yeah.
Would have been a better ending.
But yeah, this have you either of you guys seen Tusk?
No,
Love Tusk.
no, I haven't
So
seen it.
this
I'm
kind
familiar.
of reminded me of the ending of Tusk, which
Terrible.
not as, but it's like a little funnier in like a fucked up way in Tusk, but like it's pretty much the same thing. I don't want to. You should watch it because it is
yeah,
a lot of
no,
fun. So I'm not
it's
gonna. I
on
don't
my
want to say
list, for
anything
sure.
more about it, but
Well, I don't think any of us really like quote unquote happy endings
No,
in horror
absolutely
movies,
not.
right?
Well,
But to be all that said, like again, like this last 7 minutes, I feel like if they just ended with the weird, awkward comedy between Sam and the CPS or whatever the community authority group
Yeah.
from Australia, like I would have been happy with that. And the fact that they go further than that and have like her digging up worms and feeding the real Babadook, which isn't real but is real, it's like, man, why did you bother?
yeah, it would not have saved the movie if they cut that out, but it
I
definitely
would have
helped.
enjoyed it more.
It would have helped for
I
sure.
feel like ending's probably what a lot of people
In my
like.
objective personal opinion.
Right. Well, I just feel like a lot of people probably like that ending, and I think that this is what makes this kind of like excuse the expression because I'm just struggling to find a better way to put it, but this is like baby steps horror. It's a bridge to horror. It's like if you aren't a horror fan, like, but you like Stranger Things and like are sympathetic to like
It's a good way
I don't know,
to
mental
good one to
illness.
give
Say
it
how
to-
you really feel.
like, dude, this is just like
It's a movie for normies.
It's a movie for normies with mental baggage.
man, I really don't appreciate the way I've been painted in tonight's podcast. I think it says a lot more about my co-host Rob than it does
Oh,
about
it definitely does.
me.
Who,
But
Tex?
Tex, yeah.
Oh yeah, who's Rob? Who's that?
But I don't know. This movie it wasn't necessarily for me, and that's okay. I still think it was a strong debut for Jennifer Kent. I think Essie as Amelia killed it. I think that Noah Wiseman for not being an actor, and obviously his first role. This was a really strong performance from a young child, but really from anybody, and shot well, made well. It's a good enough film. Wasn't my flavor based on the rubric of what I'm judging these films on. It's gonna score higher than I want it to, I guess. And the thing that really prevents it from getting a good score is the enjoyment factor. But I'll just jump into it. Like I gave this a 67. I mean, it's good film and people really like it. It is not for me. I liked it a lot more the second time around, but it wasn't anything that I'm rushing to rewatch. But I will say I'm kind of glad I gave it a second shot just because I think anything that was redeeming, despite my lack of enjoyment, was completely lost on me because I was so focused on no gore and like everything I want in a horror movie. Okay, so like this is hilarious to me because I watched these two movies for the first time the same night. For one of them being the Babadook, which is the second movie I watched that night, and the first I hated the Babadook. The first one I watched, I absolutely loved, and I try to tell people about it. Like that's such a shit movie. Like what else do you want? Oh, the Babadook. Like, oh my god, I love it. But like, I just got done watching As Above, So Below.
Oh,
and
that's a very fun movie.
dude, that is so much fun, and it's like so horror tropey, and it's got like
Yeah.
all the cool like French catacombs and
Yeah.
like some decent
I enjoy that movie.
demonic like monsters and stuff in there, and witchcraft, occult, Satanism. Like there's just like there's boxes to check for me in my affinity for horror, and Babadook got 0 of them. I will say I like Jennifer Kent's art direction, which I've mentioned before, and one thing I thought was interesting, and you guys, or was it Rob, I think you mentioned this early on, is that you saw like a lot of the who did you say that he reminded you of initially?
Uh,
The Babadook?
Cesare.
Cesare, yeah, like Dr. Cabinet Caligari. Well, she not only did she put in Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera as like a little, snippet on the television, but she said that she focused a lot on watching like La Mansion Los Diables and Cabinet of Caligari, Phantom of the Opera. Their obviously famous lost film, London After Midnight, is another Lon Chaney classic that she said that she kind of modeled the Babadook after the man in the beaver hat, which is the main antagonist in that
Is that
film.
Ben Franklin?
No, that's Lon Chaney's character in London After Midnight.
Okay.
Duh. And then obviously Dr. Caligari also, and that she had considered filming this entire movie in black and white, and she was very committed to that idea. Actually, and I think that they started filming it in black and white, and she was watching some of the first cuts and edits from it, and she said that it just didn't work the way that she envisioned it, and so she decided to move to all muted, like gray and blue tones, and I think that probably served the movie it would probably serve the movie well, much better than a black and white would have done. But she said that it just, while she wanted to focus on like the emotion of the characters, and she thought that being black and white would kind of hone in on that rather than be a distraction with everything else, that it wasn't clicking for her, which is also part of the reason why the Babadook is all designed as like shadows and in black and white, because she did decide to keep that element of the story when she converted it to film or to color. Sorry. So it was kind of cool aside.
Fair enough. Yeah, like we've already said, this is not a poorly made movie. The cinematography is good, the acting is pretty good. But yeah, like I said, it had some really cool elements, but all those cool elements just fell flat from where I wanted them to go. I was kind of glad I got to watch this again, especially since the last couple movies we've done have been movies that I've enjoyed significantly more after the second viewing. And unfortunately for me, this one went the opposite way. I did enjoy noticing more of the stuff of how the Babadook is just repressed memories, and it's because she's depressed and stuff. I get that, I feel that, but honestly, like this movie it's just kind of boring, and I know the kid is supposed to be annoying, and he does a great job at that, but it's to the point that it very much impacts the enjoyment level of it for me. Like he's that annoying, and like you said, we're big gore hounds, and we got a bloody nose and barely a dead dog, and that's about it, which was pretty disappointing. Yeah, this on my scale, this one got a 58.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, totally
Oh.
think that's fair.
No, yeah, I think you guys are both right. I said at the beginning that this film is really good on paper, and I like a lot of elements of it.
You're saying that it would have been better as a pop-up book?
It would have been better as a pop-up book, yeah. Creepier. And I think this is a great film for, like, quote-unquote, not horror nerds, because, it has a lot of great elements to it. It's not built on gore or jump scares, although there are some jump scares to it, and there's a little bit of blood. And I think this was a great pick.
There's like no blood. There's more
There's
blood in the pop-up, dude.
No, you see bloody dead Sam where she's hallucinating.
There's more blood in Dear God, It's Me, Margaret than there is in this book or movie.
Okay. All I'm saying is, like, it doesn't rely on that at all, and it's still a good film. And I think all of our real issues with this is that there's not enough of things.
Of anything, yeah.
But I think this was a great pick as a follow-up to Midsummer, because most of this film deals with interpersonal relationships and mental illness. And a film that we all really enjoyed compared to this one, which, again, like on paper, like the score is great. I love the effects of, like, the paper pop-up dolls. Like, I love the effect of her having kind of these hallucinations that are not too trippy, but again, like, I would have enjoyed if it went further with that. If we were more like in the Mandy territory, where stuff is so crazy and insane that you're, like, losing track of like what's real and what's not. Where in this film, there's enough separation that once the scene is over, like, you can tell, like, oh, she hallucinated that, or the shadows and stuff like that.
Love love Mandy.
Oh, also love
This
Mandy.
movie would have been so
Fun
much
one.
better if there was
If it
like
was Mandy.
big old pinky dips in the super fucking
If fucking
LSD
Panos
and shit.
Cosmatos directed this movie.
Oh,
And if Nick
Um,
Cage was in it.
So I think on the individual aspects of this film, I scored it very high, like 8 out of 10s. I think maybe a 7 out of 10 for the narrative because
probably, yeah.
there were some issues with that. But overall, again, like both of you guys, I didn't really enjoy this film as much as I feel like I should have. But it is what it is. So I'm going to give this a 73 out of 100. Because it is well made and it's well acted and the whole package is good. And it just didn't tick enough boxes for me, to borrow a quote from Michael.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't think of a single box that it ticked for me. If I'm being completely honest,
No?
I'm trying to think.
You didn't like the kind of unsettling, like realistic relationship between the two of them, and
I mean, I
sort
did,
of like the like delusion and like the slow losing their minds over.
yeah, but I've seen
blurred
it. I've
line.
seen that same thing done so much better, like way other time, like so many more
fair.
times that.
yeah,
And if that's and
with
if
gore.
it's leaning on that, then it's got to be really good. I mean, if we want to talk about tension between mom and son,
Shun.
mom and son, I mean, Hereditary, does it in way better.
Butcher,
and
Baker, Nightmare Maker.
way better.
or like even movies like Cabin Fever or The Shining, kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like the blurred lines of like paranoia, schizophrenia, depression, like bipolar. A lot of these mental illnesses or conditions, however you want to preface that. This movie maybe was a little bit more realistic in the sense that she didn't just go crazy and murder everybody, and I guess that is an appeal. But to me, I wasn't sitting down to be woke. I was sitting down to watch a horror
To be
movie
stroked.
and,
Yeah.
Yeah. Woke me and struck me. He says that all the time.
He does say that all the time.
I've never said that.
Also, just out to you Elmers, Michael is a big gay ally. Like he totally supports everything about the community, and anything to the contrary of that is merely for laughs.
I'm cracking up.
Yeah.
What about me?
No,
not so much.
Bill is a
Not so
devout bigot.
God damn it!
He's part of He's part of the Westboro Baptist Church.
Now you got to go back and say that same shit about me.
I've seen you hold God hates signs. Like I can't even tell you how many times I've seen that.
Oh my goodness. Can we edit that out? What is happening with the podcast? But what is with that Fred Phelps tramp stamp you have? That is weird.
What is with
I
that?
don't even know who that is.
He's the guy who won one of those gold medals at the Olympics for swimming.
Michael Phelps, that fucking pothead. I'll get a tramp stamp of that
That
ugly
goofy looking motherfucker.
Yes.
Michael Phelps, if you're listening,
You're-
beautiful.
We
Don't allow
know
this
you do
body
oxygen
dysmorphia.
doping, you piece of shit.
Michael Phelps, if you're listening, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah,
You,
know,
should be
man,
training or
With your
something.
giant 17 size feet.
17 size feet.
This
The
is
most important thing about
so
this
weird.
movie is that Babadook is an anagram for a bad book.
I saw that too. That's pretty good.
That's funny. I didn't see that actually.
Yeah, I
That's
thought that was kind of fun little thing.
The Mr. Babadook.
Um,
Duck.
So, anything else you guys want to add, or
Yes?
are you beatboxing?
Yeah. Instead of our normal programming following week, we are doing a melange or a
Halloween Blitz.
A Halloween Blitz.
Blitz.
Yes, Halloween Blitz. We watched 30, well, more than 31, but 31 movies for October plus all of the normal podcasting, so
And
30.
a couple that we caught in theaters
6 or
to,
7,
like,
something
just
about it.
Satiate
Sub
ourselves.
40.
Barely sub 40. I think
Barely
it's like 37,
sub 40.
38 movies
Yeah.
we watched this month. And
definitely my dating
honestly, it was
profile.
a slog.
It
Slogs and hogs.
was a chore. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
definitely a chore. And we're not going to devote an entire episode to any of these movies, but we're going to do about a few minutes each, and the next couple episodes we'll just kind of go over what we thought of them.
Yeah, we plan on just pulling names of movies out of a hat and riffing on it for 5 minutes each, and we'll do that in 2 parts. I think it'll be a lot of fun because I don't think we talk over each other enough, so putting a very small time limit on it I think will help.
Yeah, and if you thought that we had loose structure on this podcast, just wait
just
until we
wait.
try to review 16 films in an
Loosey
hour.
goosey.
Oh my goodness.
And we're gonna do it all at once. So we're gonna review 31 movies next week.
Yeah, simultaneously.
So no, I think I'm actually very much looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun.
Well, you got one of those Babadook hats for us to pick movies out of, right?
I don't have one
Yes,
of those,
if
but I do
my
have a
hand
hat
can
of the
reach
Harga.
farther enough down there.
You got a stovepipe. You got an Abraham Lincoln hat.
It's a bag of holding.
You got a bag of Oh,
It's a selecting hat, actually.
It's a
What was all that? What?
Oh Lord, yes.
All right, we'll leave you guys with that.
All I have to say,
Did you like
Elmer says, I'm sorry.
The Babadook?
Or did
You
you
asked-
think it
We
was
just told you. No, we didn't
Not
like
you
it.
guys.
the Elmers? Did
The
you like the
Elmers.
Babadook, or was it more of a Babadookie in your opinion? Leave a
This was a
comment.
big Babadookie.
Leave a comment in the comment section below. Click to follow, subscribe, get those notifications turned on.
Yeah.
And if you're ever in the neighborhood, come by the studio.
Yeah. Also, tell us which one of us you like the most.
Yes.
Yes.
It's definitely a popularity contest.
Yes.
Please tell us which
Play
one of us
fuck,
is-
marry, kill in the comments from
Yes.
what you know.
Fuck, Mary, kill, Rob, Bill, Michael, or as
Or
you know us, Sweet Bill.
Sweet
Tex.
Bill, Tex, and
Throat.
Throat.
Well, I think that leaves quite an obvious choice for one of them.
Yeah, well, thank
Yeah,
you for
you-
coming to my text talk.
Text. All right.
I hate this episode. Cut it. I would thank you, but
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, pull up with us, watch 2 films. Come on, watch 2 films. If you scared, don't come over here. 13th Elm.